Morning, Noblesville. It is Monday, December 21st. It's the winter solstice. Kristen, there's so many things going on today. We got the winter
So
solstice,
many.
the shortest day of the year. I always look forward to it because that means we can only get longer from here. Welcome to another edition of Mental Health Monday here live on Monday, the 21st in Noblesville. It is the week of Christmas. We have a lot of ground to cover today, Kristen. I know there's a lot of emotions at my household, ranging from excitement to anger to frustration to, you name it. So we got a lot. I'm sure my house is probably not alone in that thought. So we have a lot of ground to cover today. We just want to welcome you and say thanks for joining us on this holiday week. We knew how important it was to be with you on a Monday because our emotions and issues that we face don't take a holiday, don't take vacation. So we're here to talk about it with you. If you're joining us, feel free to say hi in the comments section. Let us know you're watching. We love to hear that. If you have any questions at any point in time, per usual, please feel free to write those questions down in the comment section. We'll get to them now, or we can follow up with you later to get answers. I am joined once again by my great friend, Kristen Boyce, the owner of Pathways to Healing Counseling here in Noblesville. Kristen, thanks so much once again for giving your time on this Monday morning.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen, for having me. I'm glad we can be of service and hold space as we navigate a lot of emotions right now with grief, loss, fear, some excitement, some joy. So we'll just dive in today. So yes, feel free to ask questions in the comments.
Yes, and you have your holiday red on. I'm not quite as spirited. I apologize. I should have rocked my red this morning. So
Usually we're kind of matching.
I know this is a little different today. That's all right. So, well, hey, let's start the way we always start. I was actually doing it on my drive-in on State Road 32, out of my way, and I was doing some square breathing. So let's start with that, and you can lead us through that exercise here this morning.
Thank you. Here's the first thing we're going to do. If you've been with us for a while, hopefully you're practicing this at home. I recommend this to every single client as you're starting out. Do it every hour. And people are like, oh my gosh, really? I'm going to do some deep breathing every hour. I'm like, yes, it helps train your brain in your body to know what to do when you're triggered, to know what to do when you feel anxious, overwhelmed, depressed. This is the first thing I recommend starting with. So we're going to start with our feet on the floor. You're literally going to press into your feet. And with square breathing, we're going to inhale through your nose for 4. We're going to hold for 4. The hold's important as it really helps the body center itself. And then we're going to release out your mouth slowly like you're cooling soup for 4. So let's do it together. So everybody kind of get comfortable in your seat. We'll all get situated, feet on the floor. Take a deep inhale through your nose. Be sure to hold and release slowly out your mouth. You will feel your shoulders dropping down. That's good. That means you're getting that nice deep breath and the full benefit of the breath. So let's do one more together. Feet on the floor, pressing into your feet. Inhale through your nose. Hold. Exhale slowly out your mouth. So as you're navigating the holidays, anytime you feel stressed, you feel overwhelmed, you feel lonely, you feel anxious, you feel afraid, take a deep breath, repeat 5 to 6 times. So write this down, repeat 5 to 6 times. If you do have a watch that tells you to breathe, great. If you don't, I recommend setting a timer on your phone that goes off every hour to help you remember, take a deep breath. Take 5 to 6 of those in a row and notice how you feel afterwards. So I'm so glad, Mayor Jensen, you're practicing this. And I know you have been since we've been doing this since March.
Yes, hard to believe it's been since March, and we have a ways to go. I want to start this morning. I want to get through several topics. I want to, at some point in time, chat about dealing with the stress of having kids home these next couple of weeks. I know there's a lot of parents and grandparents who are helping to navigate that situation. But I want to start kind of with what I alluded to a little bit earlier about kind of the roller coaster of emotions this time of year. I think back to my childhood, and this was probably the most exciting 2 weeks of your life, with Christmas right around the corner. As an adult, I'm excited, but I also have some other emotions going on. And I know citywide, we've had some dark days the last probably 10 or so days. We had a domestic issue last week that involved a couple and some some guns were involved in that conversation. And that's, I've said all along that we're going to be open and honest on this, on this show. So I know there are some dark situations in our community. We've lost some good friends recently to COVID-19 that, early on in the pandemic, we really hadn't heard of anyone maybe who didn't have it. Now we're starting to hear of people who are close to us who have lost their lives or have lost loved ones during this time. They're losing loved ones, and then they can't mourn the way that they normally would mourn during this time. So I hate to go real dark here, but I also feel like it's very, very important that we process our own emotions during this time. So if we can maybe start with the individual, Kristen. A lot of people who are probably watching this show either live today or over the next couple of weeks maybe are turning here for some guidance to how they manage this time. How can their kids be so excited and maybe they be so sad? And so let's start with how we deal with our own internal emotions this time of year.
Yeah, and let's acknowledge that everybody's got them. Everybody's struggling on some level with some emotion, some sadness, some fear, grief and loss, maybe some anger, some disgust, and it's okay. When we don't process the pain, then we act out of it sometimes, or we hot potato it to somebody else, and we want to make them responsible for it. And we may not even be doing that consciously. We're trying to feel better. At the end of the day, we all want to feel better. We're sick and tired of the same old, same old. And when the holidays come up, it evokes, in general anyways, holidays have a lot of emotion around them. For kids, it's a different emotion. For the parents, it might be a different emotion, especially if you've lost someone around this time. This can be very hard. This can be very triggering. And the first thing is to recognize that you do have feelings and it's okay. What we do is we feel guilt and shame. Like, I shouldn't feel like this. Everybody else seems to be fine and I seem to be the only one. I'm like, no, it's normal to have grief over situations like losing someone from COVID. That makes sense. There's grief in not being able to get together with your family and feeling alone. There's grief in things changing and not being the same. There's grief when sad and hard and traumatic things like you just mentioned happen because there's pain there. There's emotional pain. And I want to change the conversation to say, let's talk about our emotional pain instead of bury it, numb it, try to make it go away, try to keep ourselves from a feeling and avoiding that. When we start connecting to what we feel, we take a deep breath, we start being kind to ourselves and having some compassion, we can start changing the narrative, not only in our own head about our inner critic, feeling like there's something wrong with us, like we're defective, we shouldn't feel this way, to start embracing like, okay, it's okay for me to have these emotions and it's normal. They're there to help us, invite us into navigating some of this hard. And when we can start having real, authentic, vulnerable conversations with one another, that's where we start opening our hearts up, opening our minds up, having more empathy for ourselves and others. We start to kind of soften. We start to go, okay, I get it. We're in this. You have feelings. I have feelings. Let's process them. Let's talk about them. Even though we might not agree, the more we process, the more we heal. And that's a misnomer. The myth of just put it in the past and it's over and just move on, it is a sham. It doesn't work because it will come up. It will manifest in some way. And usually it's in a relationship that'll start showing up and inviting us into doing our own work. What this pandemic has shown us is we can no longer hide, shove down, numb out what's really going on inside. It's inviting us to say, yes, you have feelings about all this change. Yes, you have feelings over day-to-day hard stuff that happens. And it's okay to connect with it and process it. It's uncomfortable for us and we all want to be comfortable. I mean, how many of us are Amazon priming things, right? I'm not going out there. So I'm like, oh, Amazon Prime. We want comfort and that's okay. It's when do we try to stay comfortable and it keeps us stuck. And so that's the invitation right now is to say, what am I feeling? Allow the truth to come forward and then we can tend to it and we can deal with it and we can process it. And we can hold space for it. Without doing that, you're going to be in a loop in your head. You're going to be stuck in the same narrative without any hope or possibility of it changing. First, we have to process. Then we acknowledge our PAP. My little PAP acronym. We process, we acknowledge, and then we can move into possibilities and problem solving.
I love that. So I want to kind of do a hypothetical situation with you, if you don't mind. So if I am an adult in Noblesville and tuning into this for the very first time, because quite frankly, I'm really struggling right now. I am struggling. I've never reached out for help. I've never really talked about my emotions, but I know that I'm sad, I'm depressed, I'm lonely, I'm, whatever it may be, and I'm tuning in today. What would be kind of step one for me? If I don't want to necessarily talk to anybody, I'm here quietly, privately watching the mayor and Kristen talk about their feelings. How could I take a small step for myself to go on this journey? Would it be journaling? Is it, what would be an easy first little tidbit that you could give somebody?
I love that, because you know how many people are doing that?
Yeah, right.
So
and it's the same spot. That's what we want you to do, right?
I binge content and I'm like, oh, this is helpful. I'm going to listen to this over and over and over. Great. That's the first thing that you showed up and you're here. Oh my gosh, I'm so grateful for you. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so glad you're showing up, and I'm so glad you're thirsty to do deeper work and get some help. We all need help. Let's be honest, where we're just afraid to say it. We have a lot of shame over it. So the first thing is going, yay, we're here to say, I'm so glad you're here. Secondly, the awareness that you do have emotion and that you do feel sad and stuck and scared. Beautiful. Now we can start working with that. The more you acknowledge it and tell the truth to yourself, the more we can do something about it. So of course, you're going to hear me write it out to get it out. I carry this. You can see it's very worn. I have multiple journals, because what happens is we have research that shows the more we're processing, the more we're accessing different parts of our brain. A lot of trauma is stored, and I won't get too knee deep into the brain, into that subcortical brain. And we have what's called the brain stem, which is fight, flight, or freeze. When we're processing, we're moving that along, and we're moving it up and out of the body. We're moving that up and out of our nervous system, so we don't project that onto somebody else. We don't hot potato it to them. We're not acting out of that. We're not numbing it. We're actually facing it. So journaling helps you process one of those P's to move it and to get it out. The other thing I recommend for people is get in a routine. So the first thing, what we usually do is when we're depressed or we're anxious, we're really out of a routine, because we don't have the motivation. We're like, that's the last thing I want to do. I don't feel like it. And I'm like, I get it. The one thing we got to do is, one, recognize that if we don't do something different, you're going to get the same outcome. So one is compassion for yourself. Two is some movement. And whatever you're physically able to do works. So if you sit down and you're moving your arms with little weights, fine, or your feet, or whatever that looks like for you, movement. So that might be walking your dog. That might be going out. I know it's cold out. It might be, doing a little bit of movement each day. I recommend starting with 10 minutes, make it bite-sized chunks. And the next thing I recommend is stop consuming a lot of news. People are drinking it from a fire hose because we're afraid. And guess what's on the news? More fear. And the more we consume it, the more we go into anxiety, the more we go into hopelessness and helplessness. We're looking for some window of hope. The window of hope is listening to a podcast, reading a book, consuming content that really is helping you, motivate you to say, I can do this. I don't have to do it by myself. And then, there's always therapists available out there, and programs and support groups at churches and mentors. Asking and starting to be vulnerable is really a big step. So you showing up here and just taking this in, great. Now decide today one thing you're going to do every day to start moving that needle. And it might be, I'm going to journal every day. It might be, I'm going to, spend some time in prayer, meditation. It might be, I'm going to walk my dog for 15 minutes. It might be, I'm going to start recognizing, what do I feel, and start connecting to that. It might be, I'm going to phone a friend and reach out to them and be of service to somebody else. I'm going to check in on somebody I haven't heard from a while. I'm going to write 10 notes to people in my life and tell them what a difference they've made. You see where I'm going? I'm going to commit to one thing that I'm going to do to help myself. We wait for other people to come rescue us, for us to be seen and to be known. And I need you to see yourself and know yourself first, because this is what we bring into relationships. We hope someone else sees us. Well, we don't even know ourselves. So the person in a couplehood might say, well, what do you need from me? And the other person's like, I don't know. Like, okay, well, we can't really work with that if we don't really know what's going on. So self-awareness is empowerment.
Yeah.
It allows us to start making some changes.
I love that. I want to echo what you said about routine. For me personally, and I've said all along, I'm going to share my thoughts and my heart on this show a little bit too. So I can tell you in my life, if I'm a very routine person, and if I skip workouts or and get unmotivated, that's when I get into somewhat of a funk at times. Julie Jensen will tell you that routine is so important, and as much as you don't want to pick up your routine or go out and go on that walk, every single time that I've re-engaged in that routine, I have felt infinitely better just on the tail end of that routine, starting that routine back up. So I think that's incredibly important for me personally.
Me too. I'm with you. Our treadmill was down for 2 weeks. I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Woo! I felt a huge difference because I walk every day.
Yeah. And it messes with you. If that's what your routine is, you got to get back into that and get those endorphins flowing as much as you don't want to. It's so, so important. So I want to talk about 2 more topics here. One, kids are home for 2 weeks. That's a long 2-week period. And so I want to talk a little bit about those parents who are at home with their kids, the grandparents who are helping out right now. I know my 3 little blessings are at home right now in my house with my wife, and she'll tell you it can make for a long couple weeks. So can we talk about maybe how parents and how grandparents approach these 2 weeks? Try to make it the most beneficial 2 weeks, but also just kind of maintain their sanity these 2 weeks when they're having everyone under one roof.
Yeah, the first thing is self-care, self-care, self-care. You're like, well, I can't. I got all these kids, and I'm like at my wit's end. First thing you have to do is breathe. And I know this sounds like, really, Kristen, this is what you're going to suggest. I'm like, yes, it is the most important thing you can do, because kids under 7 cannot regulate themselves. Let me say it one more time for everybody. Kids under 7 have a very difficult time with they can't self-regulate. They don't have that prefrontal cortex that's just forming. So you are their regulator. So if you are dysregulated, which we all can do, by the way, no one gets out of this category for free. We all can get dysregulated. It's noticing it. It's being aware of it. And it's saying, okay, do you want calm mama or do you want crazy mama? Okay, which one do you want? Of course they don't want crazy mama. So I'm like, okay, it's up to me. I need to take my breaths. So that's the first thing, is focusing on that centering practice. And it might be you have to go take a walk around your kitchen area, and it might be a small one. It doesn't matter. It might be you walking around the table and everybody's following you around the table to kind of get yourself centered. The second thing is kind of come up with what are some of the things at home we can do to kind of get a routine going. So it might be, okay, we're going to color in coloring books, and half the kids are like, no, I don't want to do that. And you're going to sit down and color in the coloring book. And you say, well, you're welcome to join me if you want. And you have all the supplies on the table. It might be movie time is at a certain time. It might be nap time. You've got to kind of get some things down, especially for little ones. If you've got teenagers, this is a whole different conversation. The main thing we want to do, though, is at dinner time or have some designated time where we're connecting. I cannot emphasize this enough. Where we're doing emotional check-ins, even for the little ones. We can have books with emotions on there. We're doing an emotional check-in with our partner, with our family, and with our kiddos. We're saying, how are you feeling? And if you haven't done this for teens, you're going to go, fine. I don't know. You leave me alone. I mean, it's going to look a lot different than with the little ones who you have a little more access into those emotions, especially if you're working with them at a young age. So have some emotional connection time. And then if you can, take some breaks. This is important. And don't numb out on your phone. This is so easy to do. By the way, to get on our phones and we're numbed out, you're not recharging, you're not recentering, and you're not refueling when we do that. You're numbing. So it's like, okay, maybe take 5 minutes, do a journal practice. I know this sounds so idyllic. It really does work when you get into the space of tending to your emotional needs. So if I feel myself getting really dysregulated, which happens, I have to take my deep breath and go, okay, I've got to do like 5 minutes because I'm about ready to lose it. And so I need to calm myself down You might do a yoga thing on the video with them. You might do something where you're going outside for a walk, or you're like, okay, we're going to go to the park and swing for 20 minutes. Whatever that looks like, come up with some routine and come up with some different ideas to throw in the mix so it doesn't feel so exhausting and overwhelming. It still will. And you're also tending to yourself at the same time. You cannot do this unless you're tending to yourself and regulating yourself at the same time.
I love that. I want to talk a little bit about to kind of around this Christmas theme, and the holidays can be very stressful within a relationship, within couples, right? So there's a lot of variables that play in this time of year. You have, you have different sides of families. I know I've talked in the past, where my wife is Julie Jensen's from Ohio. She's kind of sad that we're not going to get back to Ohio for like a normal Christmas this year. That sad at times gets projected onto us and all of us in our family because Julie Jensen's sad, and if Mama isn't happy, you know how that goes. And there's just stresses of different plans that are being made, and so couples can be at each other a little bit. Can we talk a little bit about interpersonal relationships amongst our spouses or our significant others, that what do we need to be looking for these next couple of weeks to make sure that relationship stays intact and in a healthy spot?
First thing, what I'm going to say is you got to check in with your own stuff. Yeah. If you're not doing that, you are going to project, you're going to unconsciously put that on other people rather than taking responsibility for those feelings. So the first thing is take a deep breath, talk about what you feel. Right now, I don't care if they're in a couple hurt or not. The main thing I'm trying to get people to do is have these deeper conversations. They don't know how to do it. They don't even know where to begin. They don't even know what they feel. So the first thing is you got to check in with yourself and say, what am I feeling? Explore it. Get curious with it. Then you can ask your partner, what are you feeling, without getting defensive. If we want to get, like, if they're like, well, you're angry, and you're like, I'm not angry. First of all, don't start off with a you statement, or you always, or you never. Ixnay that from your vocabulary. Don't start off with a you, and don't start off with a you always or you never. The person's automatically going to get defensive, because how do you feel when someone says that to you? You use an I feel with a core emotion. I feel sad. What I'm inviting people into now in couples and in families, I'm asking them to get more vulnerable. So I'm asking them first to try on sadness and fear. Those are two very vulnerable emotions. So when people say, well, I just feel angry, I'm like, and what else is there? There's something else there. So it's not just anger. Usually it's sadness and fear. So I say, try on sadness and fear first. If that feels too overwhelming, okay, we can lean into maybe some anger. And I'm going to ask you to explore other emotions. Ask your partner what they're feeling. If they go, I don't know, don't get upset. Go, okay, maybe we could explore. If there is something bothering you, I really want to know. I do care about you. Then when they share, you're going to acknowledge. You're going to say, oh, that makes sense. You feel really sad because you can't see your family. And it's really hard when you're around my family. And it brings up all that grief and loss, because you miss your family so much. And I get that. That makes so much sense to me. And it's okay for you to be sad about that. Tell me more about it. Well, I missed, seeing their faces and our traditions and the meals. And you go, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. It's really hard this year to be away from your family and not see them. Maybe we could do, a Zoom. Is there anything you want to do? Like a Zoom call where we could open presents over Zoom, or we can come up with our word for 2021, each person in the family, and we can go, okay, my word for this year is, grace, or whatever your word is for the year. We can go around and talk as a family about our words that we have chosen for 2021. So it's acknowledgement. The main thing I'm teaching is processing emotions of your own and then the other person, and then acknowledging through empathy that makes sense you feel sad. Even if you don't feel that way, even if you think it's dumb, even if you think that I don't even know why the person feels that way, you don't have to agree. That's where people get hung up, or they feel like they're being accused of something. That's hard, okay? So that's why I don't say you or you always. Take responsibility for your own thoughts, feelings, and opinions. Don't put that on somebody else. I can only decide how I'm going to respond to somebody. That's the only thing I can do. I can't control, rescue, or save someone else, or try to get them to see the light. We spend a lot of energy trying to get someone else to see the light. And all I say is just hold the space, to acknowledge the feeling. You're not going to change their opinion. We really want to. Believe me, I'd sprinkle that out like it was candy. I'd be like, everybody do your own work. Okay, I can't change everybody's mind, and that's okay. It's when someone's ready to do it, they'll do it. Acknowledge what the pain that they're in. We're all in some sort of emotional pain. Let's start acknowledging it instead of pretending it's not there or minimizing it or rationalizing it or avoiding it.
I love that. So last topic I want to briefly discuss, because I want to end on this note, and I want to start our next session on this note as well. So this is the last Mental Health Monday for 2020. And so we're moving on to 2021. Thank God, right?
Wow.
2021 may not be the peaches and cream that we all think it may be, but we're going to go in with hope and optimism. A lot of people are going to be setting goals for themselves these next couple of weeks. I am a frequent New Year's resolution person, and I'll share them on this next Mental Health Monday with you.
Good.
But if someone's thinking about, all right, I need to make some goals, I need to set a resolution, I need, maybe some little tips, Kristen, on how to manage those goals and think about those goals correctly going into 2021.
Okay, real quick, I'm going to give you a lowdown version here. Pick categories. Personal. So personal, and that could be relationships. It could be that with yourself. You're going to pick maybe some home goals, some business goals, some work goals, and some spiritual goals. If you do categories, the main thing is people are like, I don't want to feel like I didn't do it, or this is the thing, I'm going to do it. And then 2 weeks in, we're like, you know how the gyms are full at the beginning, they won't this year, but pretend like we weren't in a pandemic. And then later on, there's nobody there. That's because we lost momentum. Pick things that are really pulling at you, that are realistic, and break it down into actionable steps. What is it you really want to change? And ask yourself, why do I want to change this? Am I changing, do I want to lose 20 pounds because I want people to think, oh, look how good you look? Or am I doing it because I want more energy? I want to model this for my kids. I want to feel healthier. Deconstruct. Why do you have that goal? And explore it and get curious. That's going to be a much more sustainable goal for you, rather than just, I want to lose 10 pounds or whatever the goal may be. Typically we go for weight. I'm asking people to go a little different, go deeper, explore transformation in terms of, what do you want to do emotionally? Do you want to do self-work and clean up things that you never thought you'd deal with? And just clean that up. So you are showing up with a healthier version of you in all your relationships with yourself and with other people. So break them down into realistic sections. So if you want to be healthier, for example, and have more energy, it's like, okay, what am I going to do that? Okay, I'm going to walk 30 minutes a day, every day. I'm going to journal 10 minutes a day. I'm going to get into a routine of checking in emotionally. I'm going to drink more water. I'm going to blah, blah, blah. You get the idea. I'm going to go to therapy. Whatever that looks like for you, make it realistic, or else it won't be sustainable. If you make it realistic, or forget about it, is what I'm saying.
Yep.
So that's my 2 cents in the time we have.
I love it. Well, like I said, we'll pick this up in 2 weeks then on this topic, because like I said, I'll share my goals for 2021 and talk about maybe more. If you're still stuck on what your goals might need to look like, we'll address those with you here in 2 weeks back on Mental Health Monday. But Kristen, as we always end, if I am somebody at my wit's end, I am really struggling, I need help today, not a minute to spare, where do I turn?
So you're going to call the suicide prevention hotline, because you're worth it. You matter. You're important, and you're cared about. And this is it. This is the time. Make the phone call if you feel like you need help. 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255. If you don't want to talk on the phone, that's okay. You can text 741-741 and just type in connect. And there are resources out there to help you. You can also go to the nearest emergency room. St. Vincent Stress Center, Community North also have programs. If you're in a domestic violence situation that needs to be tended to, it's okay. We have resources here in Hamilton County. Prevail has a 24-hour hotline, 317-776-3472. And we also have an overdose lifeline, 211. We know addictions are up, 211. We also have Fairbanks here and recovery centers here in Indiana. So ask for help. You don't have to do this alone. There's therapists all over the state that are doing teletherapy that's just as effective. So don't be hesitant or afraid to pick up the phone. I know it's scary and you're worth it.
You are worth it. In this season of just grace and holiday spirit and thankfulness, Kristen, I am thankful for you. I know this community is thankful for you. Thank you for giving of your time. Thanks to everyone who has spent this year with us, and know that we're not done. We're just getting started. So we're going to talk about our feelings and work through them all the way through 2021. So hang with us and join us back here in 2 weeks for another edition of Mental Health Monday. In the meantime, Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. God bless all of you. Kristen, thanks so much.
Thank you so much. God bless you all.